Hey guys, this is Colby and Ron from ToolWatch.
Hi there.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you guys for jumping on and doing this. We are very, very excited.
Are we expecting Casey to join as well?
Well, no, I believe so. She had a meeting at 9 our time, and I haven't seen her. So what? Let's move forward. I don't want to wait, to be honest.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining us. This is Maureen O'Neill, and today we are going to deliver some sales training around the ToolWatch integration services. And on our next slide here, let's David's cue. Our agenda today is to go over the summary of benefits, what the features look like, and how does the ToolWatch integration service work, and then we'll have time at the end for Q&A. We utilized the same messaging that you shared with us to remain consistent. And so if we can go to the next slide, the benefit summary really is how to help your customers save time and become more efficient by syncing their applications and to reduce errors between the two data systems. So the benefit summary here you can read is ToolWatch integration services connects with ViewPoint to provide automatic syncing of data between the two applications, save time and reduce manual input errors by only inputting data in one application. So that's the value proposition. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Michael Armstrong. He'll be delivering the presentation.
Yeah, so I think the general idea, right, of syncing data, I think we're pretty clear. So what I want to do is I actually just want to give you some sort of real concrete examples, some stuff you can kind of sink your teeth into. You know, when we're talking about list management, you can see, oh, this is what it looks like to the client, right? We just want to be pretty clear on that. So we've broken things down into three categories. On the dev side of the house, we sort of had this level 1, level 2, level 3 thing, and you know that's how we talk about it with Ron. But I think what we've done is we've translated that into something that I think is a little bit more relevant to yourselves and to clients. So the first one here is list management. And we refer to that as, it's a little bit more static data, right? It's things like customers and employees. They're things that change, but, you know, they change somewhat infrequently or they change slowly. So what we did is we've identified those here. And so right now we have a list of what those are. And we try to use terminology. So one of the other challenges, by the way, just something to point out is, cost codes or cost centers, that's an idea that exists, for example, in ToolWatch and not necessarily in ViewPoint. So we've also tried to share some of that mapping where we go from one term to another term. So anyway, what we have here is an example of actual screenshot to what the application looks like to the client.
Hey, Michael, I'm sorry, this is Colby. I don't want to jump over, but just real quick, so kind of the you know, cost code and cost type, is ViewPoint using phase and category? Is that kind of that terminology or that link?
Yes. So they're using phase. Category there is a category that goes to category. They're using jobs. And we actually have an index that we've included in the PowerPoint that we'll be sharing with you, so you have a better idea of that.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, just because as an example, jobs map to 2 or 3 different things on the ToolWatch side. So yeah, that will be good, so you can get into that nitty gritty when you want to.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, so the example seems pretty simple, but you know it's good to have this really foundational sort of simplistic thing. So step 1 is for us, right? It's our control. So what's the list of customers, you know, actually in the ToolWatch screen, in the customer list screen, right? So here's an example, right? So then we flip over to ViewPoint, So the next item, number 2, is a viewpoint screen, and we created an example customer. So I create the customer, put in all the information, hit save, right? And then what happens after that, and this currently is not in real time, it would be a daily thing. So if I put in 2 or 3 or 4 customers during the day, in the evening, our integration is going to run, right? The integration sync is going to run. So if we go to our next slide, that happens, the data, the integration service run, that happens behind the scenes. You don't see anything, right? You don't see anything running or doing anything like that. You don't have to, a user doesn't have to click a button to make it run. It just runs. But what you'll see the next morning, you'll come in the next morning, you'll open ToolWatch, and now you have a new customer. Okay? And it loads in just like, just like if you had typed it in ToolWatch. Right? Now the other thing that we're doing, and this is pretty important, and again it's a pretty basic fundamental thing, but I want to make sure we're pretty clear on it. So if I go back into ViewPoint and I pull up that same customer, and let's say I make a change, whether I make a change to their address or their phone number or something like that, and I hit the save button. Again, when our integration service, when our sync runs that evening, right, I'm going to come back in the next morning, right? I'm going to pull up ToolWatch. Customer's still there. The customer number hasn't changed, right? So that's, I can still find them if I knew the customer number I was thinking about, but now the address has changed or the phone number's changed. And that works the same way with all those static objects. So customer and employee, cost center, etc. that we listed out in the previous slide. And so, we've talked a lot about the value, but there's a lot of value to that, right? Not only are you could you mess it up, right, when you type it in, a lot of times you just forget. I've added a customer. Oh, I totally forgot to put it in ToolWatch too. So there's a lot of reasons that that's a good thing.
And so that will take effect in any changes that I've made. Let's say I make them at 5 o'clock today, and we're set to run at midnight. That's when that change, they're not in Oregon, they're in Washington. That would take place at midnight when this, I guess, integration runs, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. And that's as frequent, the most frequent we have it set up is to run on a nightly basis. We'll get into a little bit more of the schedule options later. So that's sort of what we call level 1 on the, in the geek world. You guys are calling it list management, which makes sense. All right, if I go to the next section, which is like kind of the next grouping of things, this is really what we've done is we've said, well, we have this set of features, which is a billing sync, right? So on the ToolWatch side, it's a billing record, or I'm posting a billing thing on the ToolWatch side, and again, a lot of the ViewPoint clients are using ViewPoint for all their accounting. So what we're doing is we're taking the billing data and we're loading it into ViewPoint, and we're actually entering AP and AR records in the ViewPoint side. And there's a lot going on here. So I'm going to try and step through that, because there's a lot of options as well, a lot of things that, there's some small things that the clients can do. So if I go into this, I'm actually going to just share some screenshots of this too, of this too. We'll go to the next slide. So in ViewPoint, AP and AR entry is sort of fundamentally from a workflow perspective. It's sort of a batch process with an approval step. So if I create, if I'm adding accounts payable records, I'm going to enter those. Let's say I'm a bookkeeper or something like that. And as I'm entering them, I'm also going to enter the project manager who's responsible for them. And so we try to follow the same workflow while basically we're automating the entry, but we're not eliminating the approval step. So here you can see before our service runs, before the sync runs, we don't have a batch. After it runs, we've actually created a new batch. Okay? And that batch is going to have several records, the detailed accounts records, which you go to the next slide. we can see the actual entry of the detail on it. And all this information, this detail, is coming from ToolWatch. And one really important thing to note is we don't pull any of the billing records in until they've been posted. Right? So again, the client, they're doing all their work in ToolWatch and they're tracking usage, the way they're supposed to, the way the tool works really well to do. But we're not going to pick up anything until they actually post it. As soon as they post it, again, we're pulling that overnight.
Okay, I have just a detailed question.
Sure.
On the screen that you're on right now, I see some yellow fields and then white. What are the yellow fields?
That's totally a ViewPoint thing. But generally it means they're required.
Gotcha.
Okay. But not always. ViewPoint's a little. It's an interesting application with it.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway though from what you've just told me though is nothing is going to move until our people have posted it, which means it's been approved, and that's comforting. I mean, that would be expected, but that's very comforting to me and to our clients, I think.
Yeah, and it's a critical thing to notice because we've had clients ask, well, hey, I don't want this, I don't want records loading in every day, because sometimes it's, it's a once a month thing, or maybe it's an every 2 weeks, and we say, well, you control that, right? Nothing loads into your accounting system until you actually post it.
Perfect. Okay, great. I like that.
Yep. So this is the detail screen, and it's with accounts receivable and accounts payable. It's pretty common across accounting systems where you have sort of a header record, right? Whether it's sort of like which tracks, maybe it tracks your invoices or something like that, and then you actually have all the detail lines. And so it's the same way here, and you can't see it very well, but the bottom section you can actually have multiple items. We just have one here just for simplicity's sake, but it just works with the accounting system. So then the next slide. So here we're actually just sort of looking at, hey, before the service, the sync actually runs, right? Here's what our AP, our accounts payable, our unapproved accounts payable looks like. And then after it runs, the next slide. Here we've got some new records. And one of the things we try to do, and this is actually built into the system, you'll see like the reference field and the description. We try to be pretty clear of the source of the data. Right, so the records above, like the 189, the 188, you can see those records look like they're hand entered. They're entered in some other process. Everything with a TW on it, or in the description it says ToolWatch. You can look at that and it's really clear where it came from.
So just a quick question on configuring like the detail level versus the header level. Help me understand that a little bit if you could.
So when you say the question of configuring it is, well, let me tell you, this is a tough one because it gets a little, there's a fair amount of detail here. We allow this to basically allow the summarization level configured. So the way to think about it, let me use ToolWatch terms. We run into use cases or scenarios where customers want to create a single AP entry per cost code. And so that's actually entered in our configuration. And so then the service looks at that and says, all right, I'm going to take all my data that was posted and I'm going to roll that up to, for each unique cost code, I'm going to create an entry. All right. Or we've also seen customers that say, no, that's too low level. I just, my cost center, that sort of coincides, better with how I do things. I want a single entry for each unique cost center, just as an example. So that's sort of the basic configuration setting that we have there. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, no, that I think you're on track. I think that's so far so good there.
Yeah. The other one, and this gets, with the header record and the detail line records, it gets pretty confusing pretty quickly sometimes. I have to like stop and write it down. I confuse myself. We also allow a configuration of how detailed the detailed lines are. So we've had some customers that say, I don't want a lot of detail in my lines. In fact, I just want the line level to match my header. We've had others that say, no, I want all the detail. Every single billing item that comes from ToolWatch, I want that listed out in my lines. And so that's also a configuration.
All right, good. You know what, I think that's cleared up. It's kind of clicking for us right now, so thank you. We're feeling pretty good about this now.
Okay.
Not that we weren't before, but it's making to us.
Yeah, it's a lot clearer. It was probably a little bit fuzzy, I imagine. So then the next slide, did we get the PDF in, Dave, or were you just going to pull that up separate? Can you pull up the PDF and can we back up one?
I'm sorry, I was on mute.
Yeah, on the slide. So I'm gonna explain this, and if you could go ahead and can you pull the PDF, Dave? The invoice PDF.
Yeah.
So the other thing is, I don't know how familiar you guys are with ViewPoint. I mean, maybe you're. So I don't mean to offend if you're really familiar, and I'm being really sort of basic here.
No, be basic, because we know enough to be dangerous. So
okay.
Yeah, I'm not offended by the basic level for sure.
So in ViewPoint, I can actually attach documents to each one of these entries. And up at the top, there's a little clip thing, and you can actually hit that drop down, and you can attach one file, multiple files. So with accounts payable as an example, what we do is we actually provide a PDF file. So we've got an AP entry, and so even if the client, let's say they don't have all the detail in the line items, we're also attaching a PDF. And we have clients, for example, Tarleton, who looks at it and says they actually use this as the invoice that they send to clients.
So who's creating this invoice? Are you guys creating this, or is this ViewPoint who's doing this?
We're creating it.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we're creating it. The logo, so here you see the Tarleton logo, that is configurable. That's actually, we upload the logo as a part of the organization or the client's stuff.
Okay, great. It looks good. Yeah, I think that's what people are looking for. So, and that is attached at what level? Where is this being attached inside ViewPoint?
If you go back to that slide, it is attached at the entry. So here we're looking at the AP entry item. Actually, go one slide back, one slide up. A little more clear. This is a little bit different view. One more. Yeah, this is a little clearer. If I were doing this by hand, this little paper clip, I would click on this little paper clip right here. And
okay, perfect. That's
just upload.
Okay, perfect. So it's at the actual invoice entry level. Okay, perfect. Yep. Got it.
All right. Go back down a few slides. So that's the billing. That's kind of in a nutshell the billing and how that works. Any questions?
No, sorry, I kind of fired as we went.
Yeah,
so
yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Just want to give you a last chance there. And then the last section.
Hey, Michael, before you move on,
yeah.
Does that Ron, for you, does that clarify some of your questions in the email that you sent yesterday as far as understanding the billing?
My questions in the email yesterday were more on a technical level to make sure you were getting the right fields from, API call.
All right, great.
So I think it's a little different.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And then, well, on the development side, we call level 3, but I've heard this referred to as tool sync. I've also heard this referred to as inventory management. I think all those things are probably correct, and that is what we're looking at is, as an example, is equipment specifically. So we've got equipment and materials, and we're going down the path of treating equipment and materials a little bit differently, even though they probably fall under this same bucket. But just use equipment as an example because I think it makes the most sense here in this scenario. I think a lot of clients want to track those assets in their accounting system for depreciation purposes and that kind of thing. But then they want to track the physical thing in ToolWatch, where it's going, who's got it, who's responsible for it, is it out at a client site, that kind of thing. And so what we're seeing is clients want to add equipment just in one place. They want to put it, add equipment in ViewPoint and have that sync up to ToolWatch where they can then track it and manage it the way they want to. And so this is actually the piece that we're working on right now with Ron and his team, and we're planning to release that in mid-February.
All right, and I think you're spot on exactly what you just said is, from the sales side, that's exactly what people want to do. So I think we're definitely on the right track with that for sure.
And this one, is a little bit, it's not in yet. I don't think we're too far away, but there's some nuances to this. So we wanted to make sure we got those nuances right. Okay, what do we got next here? Okay, I did allude a little bit. I'll just hit this real quick as far as the synchronization scheduling. The most frequent that the synchronization is going to happen is on a daily interval, but it can be set up as weekly. It can be set up as monthly. You can go in and select the last day of the month, right? So the last day of the month is actually a different choice than like the 30th, because the last day of the month is the 28th, the 30th, the 31st. So you can select the last day of the month, the first day, etc. You can also select the 10th and the 13th and the 22nd. So if you've got some weird accounting processes or schedule, we feel like we can handle that. And that's all a configurable thing.
Okay. So with that, and at the risk of not getting any detail that I won't understand, why is it set up, the most frequent is daily? Just because of server load or something? If you could explain that to me so I can tell my clients when they ask, that would be great.
Well, we've talked about doing it more frequently. We've talked about, does it make sense to do hourly updates? Does it make sense to actually make it on demand, right? Allow a client just to, hey, let me log into the website and click a button. Those are features we've discussed. They're on our backlog. We haven't prioritized those yet. I probably would say, I don't know if Dan, you want to weigh in here, but if there's a lot of demand for it, we would consider it for sure, I think.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think I sent it in my note to Ron yesterday, just as a reply. I would love for you and I to just get our heads together on where you see product vision, and just make sure that we get ourselves aligned. Obviously, we want to do anything that we can to bring in more users. So I think if that's something there's a demand for it, then we'll obviously get to it.
Yeah, and this is Colby from the sales side, and I don't necessarily know if there's a demand, but every time I tell somebody, it's going to run, daily, they're going to say, well, why doesn't it run weekly? And I don't think it's a showstopper, or, you know, why doesn't it run hourly? I don't think it's a showstopper, but if I can just say, yeah, you know, this is what it's configured, and
All right, for most business practices, we found that,
yeah,
or whatever the case is.
Okay, so yeah, as long as I just know that, then I'm happy to work around that by all means.
And for everyone's awareness, the daily interval was designed based on feedback from our first 2 customers. I'm assuming, is that correct?
Yeah, it's based. Yeah, it is. It's based on the use cases we have, and you know, for it to run demand or run every hour, there is a heavier load for it, or you know, that's going to cause. But you know, if there's demand for it, we'll do it. But yeah, it's based on our discussions with our initial clients.
Okay, and I heard on our backlog, and to me, when our developers tell me it's on our backlog, that's a nice way of telling Colby that go stand at the window and look outside, and it'll get done sometime. So no worries on that. I'm good with whatever you deliver.
Yeah. I mean, Ron, I mean, you know, the deal with you know, if it's the demand, you know, it's the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So we just, you know, if there's a demand for it and it's driving revenues and products for everybody, then I think it gets higher on the priority board.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So no worries on that, guys. Thanks.
All right. What do we got next here? What's our next topic? Yeah. So configurations. So this is the topic that I've fretted over the most of. How do I communicate this, sort of coming from a technical standpoint? Because I think this is a really compelling feature set, but it also gets pretty complex because we do allow a lot of configuration. So what we did here is we just listed out, just like, hey, here's a list of configuration settings without going into a lot of detail on it. We do have an index if we wanted to like really dig into it. We can do that. But there's actually, I think there's 2 slides here of just a list.
I'd probably defer to Ron. Again, I don't need detail on the sales side. Ron may want it.
I would like to see it if it won't take too long.
Sure. You want to do that now, or do you want to do that at the end, or?
Maybe at the end,
yeah.
So I can leave.
That's fine.
Okay. All right, so we'll come back to this, actually, once we get into the index. We'll come back to the configuration stuff. Okay, so the next 2 or 3 slides is this is really just about, like, we're trying to let's get some detail on how do we qualify, what details are important when we qualify, and then what's that client onboarding and setup even, what does that look like? So that's what we're thinking about here next. So this first slide, I think you guys have probably seen some of this before. We tried to add a little clarity to it. So the first sort of chunk of items these are prerequisites, right? So a client, they need to have ToolWatch or be in the process of buying ToolWatch Enterprise, and of course subscribing to the integration service as well. Right now we're supporting ViewPoint 6.8.2. We're actually working on installing the next upgrade. So as we go forward, we'll support 6.8.2, and then once we do an upgrade, we'll support that as well. And then I imagine we'll have a very well communicated retirement plan as we get way out on releases, but we haven't identified that yet. But anyway, so 6.8.2 is what we're supporting, and then of course we need connectivity. So we need a client that has good connectivity to the internet from the network. All right, and then once we have all that, I think it's important for the client to understand that if you're a ViewPoint client, we're going to have to install a small application on your network. So they'll have to allow us to do that or have the ability to do that. We'll need an account on their ViewPoint database. And then, hey, they need the integration service powered by Gadellnet. That's the requirement. So just some basics, some real basic things. I think most of these, probably aren't a big deal, but I think, the ViewPoint version and do we have halfway decent internet connectivity? Maybe some things to consider. All right, what we got next here? Okay, onboarding. And we still got a little bit of work to do on this, but we've been really trying to hash this through because we want it to be a really clean process, for our clients. As I imagine you do too. So we just got some basic details. We need the client name. We need contact information. Who's the main contact, or maybe there's two main contacts at the client. We need to know that. Oh, and by the way, we need to know that because we also have a notification system, which that's another one of those things I didn't really want to get into because it's really detailed. But if we're really trying to build in a few checks and things like that for if things don't run as expected, we're letting the client know. So that's a notification thing as well. On the ViewPoint details, I already referred to the fact that we need access. We need credentials for the system to work. And then installation, at least temporarily, and then at least initially, I figured our plan is to do the installation, and so we'll need remote access in. And then from ToolWatch, we need credentials. We need the API key. That's stuff you guys do fairly regularly, so I don't think that's a really huge issue. And then what are the configuration options? And this is actually the one I'm really thinking about is how do we maybe create a template or something that makes that easy to get the information that we need. And so that'll be a pretty important piece too. All right. So I don't think a lot.
I see that as maybe the client filling out like a fair part of that data, or do you, I guess maybe that's a small detail, but what's going to work the best, do you think, in that type of collecting that data?
Yeah, are you thinking for like everything on this slide or just the configuration?
Well, yeah, that contact information, top 2 contacts with emails, permissions to install and do that type of stuff. Is that going to be like a living document, or should that be something we fill out? Again, kind of a minor detail, but just in my sales process, I'd like to kind of, deliver that to these prospects.
Sure. Well, I definitely want Dan and Maureen to weigh in here, but I think for us, we're trying to figure out where does that handoff make the most sense, and I think regardless of where we decide what that handoff looks like, we're definitely going to need at least the basics, name, contact info, because if you want to hand it over to us and you want us to engage with them, we need a vector. Where do we go? Who do we contact? That kind of thing. But Dan or Maureen, do you guys have a thought?
Yeah, I think that the faster and that we can get this off of your plate on this onboarding and transition and get it to our support team or our customer, facing group, the better. So yeah, that's probably a decision that we'll handle. So yeah, we'll take that.
Okay. Yeah, and we've for that a little bit more detail on the implementation process, we've sort of really tried to at least the beginnings of sketching that out, what we think that looks like, so we have a good idea.
Okay. All right. That all looks great.
Okay. All right.
So, question I have, that looks wonderful. Is the Sage Timberline, is that next week or a couple weeks out before that's done, or where do we stand on that?
Today's Thursday.
Yesterday. We're not done yesterday.
No, that looks great, guys. I'm very excited.
Yeah,
I think the Sage, though, kind of the, ViewPoint is awesome. ViewPoint is definitely the up-and-coming solution in construction accounting software and really, far beyond that. But I don't know, I'm kind of guessing here, but Sage probably has 10 to 15 times the number of clients that ViewPoint does. So I'm very excited about ViewPoint, and obviously want to walk before we run, but I think between the two of these systems, we'll cover a lot of the market for sure.
So for you, is that kind of a no-brainer that Sage is the next priority from your?
Undoubtedly, yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, for sure.
And that aligns to what I've talked to Don about as well.
And
is there any other packages out there from the sales team? Is there any other packages that you're hearing from the customers that they're interested in outside of accounting?
Outside of I stopped listening kind of there for a second. Sorry. As far as accounting,
as far as integrations and stuff like that, are there any other pieces that you would be looking at outside of accounting?
Not really. That I think the biggest piece, I kind of lump depreciation into that, that accounting side of things. We'll get people that say, hey, we want to do depreciation. ToolWatch doesn't do that, but, FAS or one of those pieces does, or maybe ViewPoint does it inside there. But no, really, I think just that accounting is the true integration. Now, moving forward, integration with GPS providers is a piece.
Yeah, that was my thought. Yeah.
Yeah, some type of integration there where, and coming from our side, what people want is, I call it kind of the magic ping of, hey, I want to know where this truck is, and so I pull up that truck, and now I hit locate on a map, and I can see, all right, it's sitting at the job site 1531, it's currently idling, and, that type of stuff. Now, that doesn't have near the demand that accounting does, but it's certainly a kind of a next step.
Okay, great.
All right, so fantastic. I wanted to thank Maureen on a different note for kind of getting some information to one of my clients, a prospect. I think that'll make a huge difference. So from the sales side, if I have a technical question, is this something I should run through Ron? Is there anybody there? How should I handle, if I'm getting the same couple questions from a client? Who should I talk to?
You can go, if you want, you can go ahead and send those on to me, and then I can get a technical resource on our side to address them and get it back to you.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
So I can act as your main point of contact.
Okay, that's perfect.
It'll be good also for me to see the types of questions that are coming up over and over again, because that might lead into, some kind of sales tool we could develop together.
Wonderful. All right. So are you ready to start with this?
So David, were we able to record this session?
Sorry, I was talking on mute again. Yes, we were. So this is something that we can play back for you later.
Right. So if Casey wants to view the training, we can get that to her as well.
Yep, that'd be great. I think if we could get that to her, that would be perfect.
And then I can go ahead and get a copy of this PowerPoint also over to you.
Wonderful.
Excellent.
Great.
So are you ready to deploy this? I mean, if I have a client that says, hey, I want to go with this, where are you guys at? Or where are we at as a...
I would say we're in pretty good shape for level 1 and level 2. Or what do we call that? Sorry, I can't remember what it's called. I don't even know.
For static data and for billing.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm not even worried about that level 3 right now, to be honest. I think if we could just, that level 1, level 2, if you guys feel pretty good about, hey, in 30 days we're ready to go, or 15 days, or whatever that time period is, then I think we'll really start trying to move forward, really starting to push it.
And you kind of alluded to this in your slides, but what would you say an expected timeline would be from when we have a customer that's signed up and ready for this to we get them to go live? So that onboarding and implementation process.
Yeah. So we've kicked that around a little bit. Assuming the queue isn't really full up, which hopefully it will be, that'll be a good problem to have. But assuming it's not, and assuming we don't run into some really sort of, I don't know, the client doesn't run into some weird things. We're sort of foresee like a 2-week-ish window there. But I think it's important for us to identify the main steps, right, and what our dependencies are, so we're all on the same page. Because sometimes something comes up that's a dependency and it gets pushed out, right, and so you don't go live for 3.5 weeks. And I think it's just really important that we be transparent as to the why. Maybe the client said, I want to go fix that in my system first. I actually foresee that happening.
So I think that's an important point to our sales team then, Colby, that this isn't something that's going to come online tomorrow.
Yeah.
This type mentality. Somebody's interested in it.
Oh, we would never overpromise anything.
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember when you are setting those expectations is that anytime you have an integration, you've got people that are using information in different ways, and they're using the ability to store information in different ways. So I think the time for us is really establishing that we know everybody's using things the right way. And to Michael's point, you will run into some things to where people realize that they've kind of bastardized the system as it is, and then when they're getting ready to integrate, they say, no, I want to hold off and clean up this data and how we're doing it first so that we don't have bad data in a new system. And I think we've already seen that once. So I think that's where he's a little hesitant on timeline. But I think ultimately our goals are going to be to kind of set a realistic timeline right now. And then as we get better at the integrations and you guys come on board to be able to do the configurations and then be able to set these things up, I think obviously we want to get that down to a matter of days, not weeks. So I think we just have to grow into that.
Yeah, and from the sales perspective, I mean, really ViewPoint is a year-long, 18-month type implementation. So, if we come to the table and say, hey, this is a 30-day process, or this is 60, or as long as we're transparent and we set those expectations, I don't think anyone's expectations are, hey, we need this in 3 weeks or 2 weeks. I think maybe we could do that, but again, they know it takes a little bit of time, so
great.
Don't feel pressure of that.
Okay, great. Yeah, I come from the SaaS world more, and so they're when they hear a matter of days, they're thinking seconds. They're like, I want to click the button and everything's hooked up.
Yeah, that's exactly. We come from the world in construction of big chief tablets and crayons, so we're probably more patient. So perfect.
Great. And did you have the index files, Michael? Are those slides still here with the additional data that Ron wanted?
Yeah, we could go through that. We had a little more time.
Okay, great. And one question, maybe segmenting into that. For the syncs that take place, say, on a daily interval, how long is that sync actually performed for? What happens if other data is changed during the time that sync is running? Those type of questions is what I'm alluding to.
So you're thinking like if while it's running, somebody like makes a change or something in ViewPoint while in process or something like that?
I mean, I guess I could check on our side as well, but for what we've seen over the last week, does the sync process take minutes or an hour, or a rough idea?
Right now, the whole process is taking a little over an hour. There's a lot of extra stuff in there right now, so we're watching every step, we're logging every step along the way. I think it's going to speed up quite a bit as we refine some of those things, but we're really erring on the side of caution right now on our side, so that we don't want clients to see any hiccups.
Sure. And do you see that same process continue with new customers, where we do more logging and walk before run mentality initially with them, and then transition them to the faster method? Or is that only for these initial clients?
The approach we're trying to take is, the first 5-10 clients, on our end, we're putting a lot into it. I mean, we're watching the data, we're running checks on it as it's run through. We're doing a lot of extra things that I think will become, one, we won't need all of them in general, and two, there'll be a lot more auto. So as we go, I really expect it to be, faster, a little bit more efficient from our perspective. But, again, that's mostly behind the scenes. I wouldn't expect much of that, really to be visible for my clients.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think to the question at hand was, as far as what there is in timeline and syncing, if we're doing it daily, it's really, there's a cutoff. As soon as we initiate that run, anything before it would go, and anything after it would be on the following day's run. So,
so there's not like a miscellaneous hour of leeway there where things could not get transferred.
Right.
Okay. No, that sounds reasonable to me. Okay.
All right. Ron, did you want to get into a little bit of detail on the configurable options?
Sure. Maybe spend a couple minutes and see where we get.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can just kind of go through, and if you have questions. So the first one is actually cost centers. Generally, we map jobs or cost centers of jobs from a ToolWatch to ViewPoint standpoint. But one of our main beta clients is Tarleton, and they wanted reviewers mapped to cost centers. So this is a configurable option.
And a reviewer is a person?
It is, yeah. A reviewer is a person. A lot of times it's a project manager. That's a concept in ViewPoint.
Okay.
Yep. The next one is scheduling. We've talked a lot about that. That's configurable. Category exclusions. I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Category exclusions, this is what it says, is to be able to exclude categories, specific categories in the sync. This one wasn't easy because ViewPoint doesn't store these as like a number where you could put in a range or anything like that. It's an alphanumeric field. But that's configurable. So you can basically add as many of these exclusions as you want.
These are ToolWatch, tool categories.
Yeah, tool categories, yeah.
Okay.
The next one's a pretty straightforward one, and is if you've got some old equipment, old items, you probably don't want to include it, and you probably don't want to sync that back and forth. So you can specify a date, a cutoff.
Okay.
System of record. You decide, do you want ViewPoint to be the system of record for an object, or do you want ToolWatch to be the system of record for the object?
And when you say an object, is that still configurable per list category?
Yeah. Sorry. When I say object, I mean list item, like cost center, categories, etc.
Right. So for cost centers, maybe we want ViewPoint to be the system of record, so ToolWatch gets updated, and then for locations, vice versa. That's to be clear. That's what we.
Right. Yeah, that's the idea. The next one's an interesting topic. So in ViewPoint has like an employee table, right? Seems pretty standard. But then they also have project managers. And you would think, well, a project manager must be an employee. Well, it isn't. Project manager entered completely separate from employees. And so what we try to do is we try to identify which employee record matches to the project manager just in the source system before it even goes into anything in the ToolWatch side.
Okay.
And so basically this is really just do you want us to try to do this or not?
So you're saying project managers are a different table than employees in ViewPoint, and do they always match? They're always a match?
No, they don't. They don't always match. The field we try to match on is email address. And if we find a project manager that does not exist, or that at least we can't match them on the employee table, then we send a notification, or we send an email. And so that's one of the places where that contact and notification idea comes in.
Sure. Okay.
Because the client might be expecting that hey, why isn't this project manager showing up in ToolWatch? Well, it's because we couldn't find them, and we wanted to let them know as soon as we catch that.
Okay. So can you repeat the question you had to me on this one? You're asking for...
No. Sorry. I misspoke. I don't think
okay.
The next one is category description. We've definitely learned pretty quickly that your clients like to have control over description. So this is configurable.
Is this the category description override? I might be confusing this with a different item.
Yeah, what this is, let's see, the best way to describe this, we allow integration, so like in a web screen, you can actually type in variables. So what we say is hey, you can put any of these 10 fields into the description target. Any of these 10 source fields can go into the description target. And we've said, here are the variables. Just type in the variable where you want it to go, right? And if you want to put it stuffed in between, you can do that. So it's almost like a mail merge kind of thing.
I guess the piece I'm getting confused is on the override. This is the mapping between categories in ToolWatch and a table and ViewPoint, maybe categories as well.
Yeah, I think, let me just double check. I think it's categories. Yeah, equipment categories.
And I'm guessing from what I'm reading here that some sort of code is used in ViewPoint or vice versa, and we want to append that to the category description?
Yeah, well, so there's... Go ahead, Dave.
I was gonna jump in for a second. The default mapping, if you leave this configuration blank, do nothing with it, Ron, the default mapping is going to be whatever the equipment category description is in ViewPoint, moved straight into ToolWatch, right? But
or if ToolWatch is the system of record the other way, right?
Right.
Okay.
But for situations where somebody says, well, we want the description to be the description as it is, let's say at ViewPoint, plus we want to add the manufacturer, the model to that, so that we can easily identify it in ToolWatch, we can do that with this override.
Is this, Dave, is this separate from the topic we discussed a week ago on it was location we talked about a week ago, right?
Yes, I mean, conceptually, it's similar, I would say, but we have not got a configuration option in place for what we discussed a week ago. We do have it in place for the equipment category.
Okay. So same conceptual idea. Okay. Okay, I'm good on that one.
Okay. Should I go to the next one?
Yeah. Okay. Next one is location visibility. The options here are to make it visible to everybody, or to honor the standard visibility by location.
Is this different from how we set visibility for locations in ToolWatch?
No, this is how you set visibility and location in ToolWatch. What we're saying is, so we're giving you an option, right? So if I'm adding locations to ToolWatch, right, we could just hard code it that says, all right, these are always all visible to everybody. Or we could hard code it and say they're always going to honor the, the location approach where only users assigned to that location can see it.
Okay. This is like a default visibility for new locations coming into ToolWatch.
Yep.
Okay.
Scheduling's there again. We like scheduling.
Well, it's there because it's configurable on either side for ToolWatch or ViewPoint.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah.
Oh, I missed that. So this is the ToolWatch configurable slide.
Yeah. There are slight differences. Well, there are differences because some things are important going one way and some are important going the other way, or going into one system. Let's see.
The exclude posted before makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, that's basically just how we pull billing records.
Invoice grouping, I believe I'm good on. Other than what fields are allowable for that would be my only question.
That's a good
group
question.
Invoices, but
yeah, I know a couple off my head, but that's probably something we should add to this one too.
Yeah, we can take that offline, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Description, okay, I'm just reading through these.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, the rest of these I'm familiar with.
Okay. We're getting closer to having the configurations. That makes sense.
All right. Okay. Is that the last slide?
Yeah, that's the last one, isn't it, Dave?
There's one more, but it's about some of the mapping.
Yeah, actually, Ron, you have better documentation on that.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
This was just a high level, just trying to apply a little bit.
Well, that answers my questions for today.
Okay. Great. So I think we're done.
Thanks again for one, putting this together for the sales team and recording it so we can access it, and two, for going through these last couple topics with me. I'm grateful for that.
Hey, you're welcome, and thanks for making the time. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks. See you later.